Hello, Luke Malevich here with Trombone World, and today we're going to talk about buying a used trombone. Before we get started, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. And please feel free to share the videos with anybody that you think is going to find them helpful, particularly anybody that's going to be looking into purchasing a trombone in the near future. Now in this video, I want to talk about the reasons why I recommend for all my students to purchase used trombones, as well as some of the things to watch out for when looking at buying a used instrument. Also, I'll mention some of the places where I've purchased my instruments, some of the places that I know we can buy a good quality used trombone. I won't be mentioning any particular brands in this video. I mean, you'll be able to see what I'm playing, but I won't mention specific brands or models. I'll leave that for another video. Every player, every teacher, every educator has their own preference as far as what they want their students to purchase, so I won't be talking about that here. Just kind of general things to watch out for. Now, one of the main reasons that I recommend for all of my students to purchase used instruments is because of cost. You can get a great quality professional instrument at oftentimes about half the price of a brand new one, and sometimes even much less. Starting with my small bore jazz trombone over here, these go generally for about $2,500 and up from there, depending on the manufacturer and the model for a brand new instrument. This one right here I was able to find for $500. For your large bore symphonic tenors, your starting price is going to be probably $3,000 and can go up from there to $4,000 or $5,000 or more, again depending on the brand and the manufacturer. Here, this instrument brand new, I believe, was about $4,000 when it came out, and I was able to get it for close to $2,000. For your bass trombones, now you're talking starting point of about $5,000, and again going up from there. Very easy to spend $6,000, $7,000 on a brand new bass trombone, whereas this one was just a little bit over $3,000. Great quality, great instrument that's going to last me for as long as I want to hang on to it, basically, with all these instruments. What you're going to notice first is all the pictures and the description of the instrument that you're going to purchase. And what I always look for is, again, just the overall condition. Now, there's going to be some plating loss, some lacquer loss in different parts of the instrument. There's going to be some dents, not always, but that they're going to be around. That's kind of the nature of buying a used instrument. So you want to watch out for anything that seems out of the ordinary, any huge dents, things that are going to be difficult to repair, which if you're buying from a shop or a reputable place, you're not likely going to run into that issue. Those things are going to be taken care of for you. But some of the things to watch out for, example, are dents in places that are going to be trickier to repair. So, in the case of a small bore tenor and all these as well, make sure that there are no dents in the slide, that the slide is smooth and that it works, which should be in the description of the instrument. Now, dents in the tuning slide here are generally going to be pretty easy to repair depending on the size of the dent, just because obviously you can take this part out, get the dent ball in, and those are pretty inexpensive to repair. Same thing here and here. Small, like kind of nicks and dents in the bell are not really a deal breaker. Those happen with mute changes and things like that. Talking about the hand slide crook here, you want to make sure, and that's always kind of a deal breaker for me, if there are any kind of big or visible dents in the hand slide crook, because those are a little bit trickier to repair, only because you have to remove this entire part, which is costly, then do the repair. And it's not just a simple case of soldering it back on. You have to align the slide, make sure everything is perfect before you do that. So that is generally a repair I'd like to avoid if I can, is to just not have any dents in this area here. Now, moving on to the symphonic and the bass trombone. With these, you have the added presence of the valve, single one here, double one there. And with these, you want to watch out for any dents in difficult to repair areas in the trigger mechanism, particularly here and here, where the whole thing would have to be unsoldered and taken off, which then requires different parts to be removed. The whole thing has to come out, and then it can be repaired. Now, this particular model, when I purchased it, everything was great, but there was this kind of a slight dent right in the area here, which I knew would take a little bit of money to repair, only because it's a little trickier. But because this is the specific instrument that I was looking for, I was able to take the chance and just spend a little bit of extra money to for this whole part to come out and get the dent repaired. But other than that, The instrument came in great condition without any other issues. As you can see, lacquer is really intact. There are hardly any points where you can see some lacquer or plating loss. A little bit in the kind of points where the hand comes in contact here and here, but other than that, it will be kind of difficult to tell that this was a used instrument or is a used instrument. Same thing with your bass trombone here. You want to make sure that, as much as you can, that all the tubes leading up to the valves are clear of any dents, because they'll just be more costly to repair, which is a repair you want to avoid if you can. And with your large bore and bass trombones, also making sure that the trigger mechanisms are in good condition, that they're not clanky, not really loud. Sometimes you might get an older instrument with a clanky valve that might have to be replaced, and again, that's a little bit of an extra cost. So it might be worth to just ask for a video. It's like, hey, how does the trigger mechanism work? Making sure that it doesn't make too much noise. You'll be good to go. Moving on to the next point. One of the questions that I always ask, and it definitely is a deal breaker for me, is the condition of the inner slide here. So I always want to make sure that the slide is the chrome plating on the slide here is intact, that there's no plating loss in the chrome. And generally, you're going to notice plating loss right along these lines here, where you can see. That's where the slide comes in the most contact. The outer slide comes in contact with the inner slide at most here. So that's where you're going to notice the most plating loss, if there is it. And if that's the case, even slight plating loss for me tends to be a deal breaker, just because over time it's going to get worse and worse. It means that the slide is almost never going to feel perfect. It might not be super noticeable, but over time it's going to get worse and worse. Either you're going to have to replate the tubes, which most players won't do. They'll just get the tubes themselves replaced. And depending on the model that you're purchasing, tubes might be easier to find, harder to find, might be more expensive repair down the line. So that's just something I'd like to avoid. Just make sure that the chrome plating on the inner slide is intact. Now let's talk about the instrument that I have back here. Now this is going to look closer to what you can expect from a used trombone. You can see a lot more plating loss on the tuning slide here. In fact, I'm going to run my finger across. It's not a smooth surface. That tells me that there's been some repair done here. But again, there are no visible dents themselves, so the instrument's going to play great. I have played it; does play well. There's nothing wrong with it. Everything here is smooth. Everything moves well. But again, this is going to look closer to what you can expect from a used trombone. And one particular issue that this horn has that I haven't thought about, because I haven't run across this myself until just now, is this. Check it out. So you can hear the metal hitting, which basically means that the two corks that go inside these tubes here are gone, whether they wore out and fell out, and which is probably what happened. So they just have to be replaced, and that's not an expensive repair at all. You just get your technician to put the corks back in, and you'll be just fine. While I can't really feel any dents, it doesn't glide perfectly. There's no plating loss here on the inner slide, but I would want to get the slide serviced before I use it, before I were to take it on a performance with me. Which for my technician can be anywhere between $150 to $230 depending on the amount of work that has to be done. But let's say I spent $800 on this trombone, which is pretty reasonable. Adding another $200 to the cost still puts me about half the price, less than half the price of a brand new one, and this will be a great playing instrument. There will be no other issues with that once the slide itself got repaired. One other thing that I want to mention, that's kind of a big deal with brass instruments, which isn't an issue on any of these here, is something called red rot. Now that basically little red spots on the instrument, which you'll be able to see pretty clearly in pictures, and a lot of players will tell you that they exist. That eventually will just turn into a hole in the instrument, but it takes a long time, and depending on the severity, it's just like a couple spots here and there. Sometimes it's not really a deal breaker. For me particularly, I try to avoid it. Some older instruments do have spots of red rot, but it's always worth to ask if there are any red rot spots on the instrument itself. So let's just kind of overview, checking for dents, particularly in the slide crook, checking for dents in hard to remove places. You want to make sure that the chrome plating on the inner slide is intact, and that the slide itself moves freely, that all the slides move freely as well. Kind of the main things to watch out for. Now let's talk about some of the places to purchase used instruments. And the first few I'm going to mention are going to be ones where you're going to have less to worry about. They're going to be your stores where the description is going to be accurate and the instruments would have been clean and prepared and ready to go. So you're going to have less to worry about. Now, starting with Dylan Music in New Jersey, then you have your Brass Arc in California, and Brass Exchange in St. Louis. Now, I've used all three over the years, and they're great stores, great reputable places, and so those are going to be all great places to look. There are more, and if I can think of any more, I'll add them to the description below so that you can check them out. Great places to look. And again, you're going to have a little bit less to worry about as far as what to watch out for, some of the things that I talked about. Now, some of the other places, first you have your Facebook Marketplace, which I'm sure we've all used before. With those, depending on who you're buying the instrument from, you want to make sure you have a really clear description. Oftentimes you'll have even high school students selling their all trombones, and make sure that everything on there is what you're looking for, right? Asking all the questions that we talked about, that the instrument is good condition. And actually, two of the instruments here were purchased from Facebook Marketplace, starting with the large bore symphonic tenor. Again, remember it had a little dent here, and I asked a bunch of questions, had a bunch of pictures sent to me to make sure everything was working well, and being very happy with the purchase on that one. And also with my small bore jazz trombone here, purchased that off of Facebook Marketplace, and again, very happy with the purchase. I didn't have any issues. I knew what to look for, questions to ask, and everything turned out great. Now, the other places that you can purchase instruments are going to be online, eBay and Reverb. With eBay, the last small bore jazz trombone that I had, I purchased from eBay, and it was really easy to tell that it was in perfect condition. There were no issues with it. The lacquer was 100% intact. When it came to me, it looked like it was brand new, and I was able to get it for $1,000, which was easily less than half of what it would cost, what a similar model would cost brand new. With my bass trombone, there's a website called TromboneChat.com, and that's a really good place to buy used instruments. It takes a little bit more work because you have to sign up for an account. You have to actually write a few posts, I believe, before you can view the classifieds or before you can write anything in the classifieds or send people messages. And then, asking for pictures, you want to make sure you know what you're looking for. Now, this bass trombone, I bought it from somebody from Trombone Chat, and there are lots and lots of people there selling used instruments. I myself have sold instruments there as well. It's a great resource where a lot of professional trombone players will go, but that can be a little bit trickier to navigate. Again, you have to really know what you're looking for, and that makes it a little bit easier. It does help to ask somebody to kind of guide you through it, whether it's your private teacher, band director. And if you do have any questions about buying a used trombone or looking for a particular brand or particular model, or just need a little bit more guidance, you're always free to send me an email at TromboneWorldChannel@gmail.com. I'll happily answer any questions and kind of guide you along. And there are lots. I was looking around this morning, even on eBay and Reverb, there are a bunch of trombones for sale that look like they're in really good condition. So these things are always available. You're always going to be able to find something. Now, if you're looking for a particular model, that can be a little trickier depending on what you're looking for. These two here were a little bit harder to find, as well as the small one here. All these, I knew what I was looking for, something specific, then it can be a little bit trickier. But if you're looking to upgrade, from your student model to a professional model instrument, you're always going to have something available to you if you're not looking for anything specific, right? Any specific brand or specific model. Those things are going to be much easier to find. So hopefully this video has been helpful to you. Hopefully it's been informative. If you have any questions, you can write them in the description. And again, you can send me an email at TromboneWorldChannel@gmail.com. Happy to help you out. And this is something that I recommend for all my students. Usually you start with your student model trombone, which and as I forgot to mention this, even a brand new student model can run you $1,200 to $1,300. A good student model, because there are brands, and it's really easy to go online and find even a bass trombone for a brand new one for under $2,000. And if you find any of those, I can tell you that they're not going to be good instruments. They're going to be student model bass trombones or student model large bore tenors. They're generally not going to be put together with the same attention to detail as a professional model trombone, and they're going to have issues with them, whether it's intonation, things like that. that are going to more than likely cause you some bad habits. So I always recommend, once you're done with your student model trombone and you're ready to upgrade to whether you want to get another small bore tenor or get a large bore symphonic tenor or a bass trombone to get a different sound for different ensembles that you're playing, always look for a used professional instrument and always ask for guidance if you don't know what you're looking for. I had to tell you a quick story. Had one of my students purchase a bass trombone without asking me where to look or what to purchase, which is, it's fine. If you want to go, you can look for a trombone, and that's totally fine. But what they ended up getting is there's nothing wrong with the model itself. It did have some issues, and the biggest thing was that they purchased a bass trombone with a 10.5-inch bell, which, for those of you that play bass trombone or are looking to buy a bass trombone, the standard bell size today is about 9.5 inches. That's where you're going to run into the most. You still see some people playing with larger bells, 10 inches, but the larger the bell you get, the problem becomes you're going to have a harder time finding a case for it. There are only 1 or 2 manufacturers that will make an aftermarket case for a bell that's bigger than 9.5 inches. And with my student buying one that's 10.5 inches, had a really difficult time finding a case for it. Yeah, so that's something you don't really think about is bell size with bass trombones. Kind of staying in that 9.5-inch bell size will make things much easier for you. Most bass trombones come with kind of clanky big cases as is, and if you want to get something a little lighter, a little bit that's still protected but a little bit easier to take with you, it's going to be much easier if you have a standard bell size, which will be 9.5 inches for bass trombone, usually 8.5 inches for large tenor, and for small tenor, small bore jazz tenor, be 7.5 or 8 inches. Usually is where you're gonna end up with. But there you go. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Take care. I'll see you in the next video.